Couple questions. Let me preference something on with the SAFE Act portion of this is with the reason that we're making the exceptions for the police is I actually pointed that out in codes, and I pointed that out on the floor of the assembly, and we knew that we had a bill that was less than perfect or that contained flaws in it. And my position at that time was that we should have fixed it before we voted on it. However, this body chose not to do that. With that said, now I'm happy with the exemption for the active duty police officers, especially on a personal note. Thank you for not taking the bullets out of my daughter's gun.
May I ask you one question while you're doing that, if I may?
Sure.
When were you in the police force? Were you in there in 90 to 93?
I was in there in the 80s.
So you were there when they went to the Glock?
No, I carried a 38.
Oh, so you didn't go to the Glock. But if you got
No.
the Glock, then how many bullets did it hold in the magazine?
I believe she has 15 bullets.
No, how much did it hold then? You remember?
I don't know.
Oh, you don't remember. Just to remind you.
I'm told it's 15.
No, that's what it carried. They didn't carry that in those days. When we passed the bill that gave them the guns, what we said was they had to stay below. They carried 9 in there at the time instead of the 16. And you didn't go up to the 16 until Giuliani became the mayor, and then he reversed it.
Okay.
But that to point out that magazine could be used and locked with a block that allowed it to carry a lesser amount.
Okay.
Okay. I just thought you might have carried one of those. Okay, your question.
No, I had a Smith & Wesson,
Yeah.
Daddy, unfortunately.
Good old-fashioned.
My problem with this is the retirees. The retired cops are not exempt. Yeah, we're not doing anything with the retired cops, right?
Yeah, we're not.
Okay. And now, I've talked to a lot of members. The New York City Police Department has what they call the retiree mobilization plan. And what this is during the time of an emergency, Superstorm Sandy, they reactivated or brought in retired cops. And they were told, bring your guns. And they were very valuable to the police department, okay? If, God forbid, we ever have another incident like 9/11, okay, these are more officers that can be brought in, okay, to free up other police officers elsewhere. So by not including the retired members of the force, I just think we're losing a great opportunity here, and we're losing a great resource if, God forbid, something should happen. And I see Mr. Lenthal standing.
Yeah. Joe?
I don't know if Mr. Farrell would yield to for an answer.
Yes, I do.
Thank you. I'm sorry I stepped out for a moment.
Hold up. It's Mr. Graf's time, and you may ask Mr. Graf to yield
Yes.
if you would so care to, Mr. Lenthal.
Yes.
For you, Joe, of course.
Mr. Graf, would you yield?
Sure.
Mr. Graf, Mr. Lenthal.
First of all, Mr. Graf, you made some excellent points in codes, and you make one here tonight. And I think that you're right, and it wasn't our intent, and it isn't our intent not to include retirees. And I have a bill that's prepared and introduced that will exempt retired police officers and peace officers.
Okay. Joe, is it possible to take your bill and add it as an amendment to this tonight?
No, because the Senate rejected it at the table. That's why the bill is introduced.
Well, if we introduced yours tonight, then the Senate would have to take it up, correct?
Well, it's not a budget bill, so it's not an Article 7 bill because the Senate wouldn't agree to it. So it's a standalone bill that will have to be taken up at a different time than when we do the budget.
Okay. But you agree that it's important, especially in light of this operations order?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, at the time, when we were considering chapter amendments, I made it a point to call police throughout the state, including Police Commissioner Kelly, to ask his opinion on whether or not retired police officers ought to be exempt, and he said yes.
Yeah.
And that was always our intent. Even in the original bill, I don't think it was our intent not to exempt retired police officers.
Yeah, and Joe, you and I have had conversations about this.
Yes.
And could you share with everybody exactly what Police Commissioner Kelly said as far as this force that was out there? Was it valuable to him?
Well, I would like to do it, but I haven't asked Mr. Kelly if he wanted me to share what he told me on the floor. So I might be violating a confidence of his, although I don't think so.
Okay.
But I'd rather ask him first before I did that.
All right. Let me try this a different way. You believe, after talking to numerous police organizations, after talking to the police commissioner, and whoever else you spoke to about this that had experience with it, that this is a valuable tool that we should not get rid of because we're not exempting these retired police officers, correct?
There's no question about it, and it is a valuable force that we could have out there, I think with different safeguards than we do for active police officers because, you know, like me and like you, we're getting older, and maybe we want to have them certify more often than the active police officer or somebody who has a permit to own a firearm.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. As far as the Safe Act portion of the bill is concerned, will the chairman yield once again?
Mr. Farrell? Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Farrell, the teacher evaluations is part of this. I think it's, and what we had with the teacher evaluations was when the governor announced the teacher evaluations, he said that the schools would be reimbursed for the cost of doing these evaluations, but there was no funding for that last year. Is there any funding to reimburse our schools in this budget, okay, for the expense that they had in implementing the evaluations last year? Okay. Has that even been discussed during negotiations that you know of?
No, not that I know of.
Okay. So basically, this was just a false promise. Was this included in the governor's portion of the budget last year?
Was this program in the government? It was never funded.
Okay. But my question is, I don't know if you remember, but last year when we did the funding portions, did the governor's proposal for the budget include funds in his budget?
No.
It didn't.
Yeah, there was no fund.
So basically that was just a false promise from the governor. Would you agree with that?
I don't know what the governor, I can't really remember what the governor said, so I can't answer the question.
Okay. Well, I feel it was an empty promise. But there's no money in there now?
No.
Okay. And then part of that last...
But we did give every locality in the state more money this year than last year and more money than the governor gave them.
Yeah, well, with my school districts, I think my school district got 2.3 raise after a lot of negotiations, where other school districts received 6%, 5%. So I'm not really that happy with that portion of the budget either.
That means they had more construction than other people, right?
Now, New York City last year did not do the evaluations, correct?
Right.
And they were told under the governor's program that my schools were told that if you didn't do the evaluations, okay, you would see a cut in your funding. Is that correct?
Say that again.
My schools were told, as part of the evaluations, that if you did not complete the evaluations, okay, there would be cuts in your school funding from the state.
That is correct.
Okay. And New York City didn't do this.
Yes.
And New York City never received those cuts.
Yes, they did. In this budget, they do it.
In this budget, they received the cuts?
Yeah, we're cutting this year, this education year, and it started July 1st, in 2012, and that ends June 30th, 2013. There's what we call the tail, because when we do the budget, we have to match that. So we always have to do the last quarter in the next year.
Okay.
So we're doing the last quarter in this year, and in that place, we have taken the 240 out.
Okay. So the schools are getting less, New York City schools are getting less money than they did last year?
No, they're getting, that money has been taken out, and they're getting less money than they would have gotten had they not done that, along with the other 4 or 5 people upstate who did the same thing. So we took that one period out. What we also then turned around and did is we didn't want that to carry through, because the intention was not to have that 240 going through each year, because it was an only one-shot hit. So we then put it back for the next year, which would be the 2014-15.
All right. Are they receiving, how much was an increase for New York City for the schools? Do you know?
300 and something.
Percentage was? What was their percentage?
$361 million.
What was the percentage?
I'm sorry?
How much percentage did they go up?
How much did they go? How much it was over last year?
I had another section on that.
Was it 2.2%? 4.6% over last year. 4.6.
Okay, 4.6, my school got 2.5% increase. So basically, the cut that you're saying that they got, you walked up to the New York City schools and took some money out of one pocket, but you put it in the other pocket. So the city's made whole. As a matter of fact, they're getting more money this year. So they really didn't get cut. What we did is we, in fact, in this budget, is we took the cut, we gave them the cut theoretically, but then we added that cut to another part of their funding stream. So the city was made whole, correct?
No, that's incorrect. What we did is we took it out of this year because the thing says we have to punish them, but not forever. We just have to punish them for this year. So we are taking the punishment in this budget because, as I said, because of the tail. In other words, from April to June, I call that the tail. And so we always have to put that appropriation in this budget. And in that budget, we took the $240 million out. And that is the short, so instead of getting X amount of money, they're getting X amount minus 240.
Okay.
Now, I added that is not going to carry through because it's only one shot, 240. So we go back to their base and put the 240 in for the next year, which is the year we're doing now, which is the larger budget.
Okay.
Of education budget. So they are paying with a one-shot hit.
Okay, thank you, Denny. And going back, I apologize. I just have one other question on the SAFE Act.
Don't apologize. I'll listen to all the questions.
On the SAFE Act, did you want to yield? Did Joe want to
If
answer?
the safe end, I'll let Joe do it.
Okay, Joe, would you mind?
Yes.
Mr. Lento?
Kevin?
Yes,
Yield.
yes, I do, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Lento yields.
Yeah, Joe, going back, tell me if you can, why we limited the bullets to 7 bullets?
To limit the number of possible bullets that would kill someone in a magazine or a clip, whichever you want to call it.
Okay. Yeah. You remember Colin Ferguson?
Yes, I do.
Okay. For those that don't remember Colin Ferguson, he was the one on the Long Island Railroad. And in that case, all Colin did was use numerous clips, correct?
Correct.
So, I mean, how does this, if they can just use clips over and over again, how is this going to make anyone any safer?
Well,
By limiting, just taking 3 or 4 bullets out of the gun.
Well, I guess the simple answer to that question is it just slows down a shooter like the one in Newtown, Connecticut, so that perhaps we could save a life.
Okay.
If the shooter only had 7 rounds in the clip and then had to change the clip, replace the clip, it would take time. And maybe by that time, police would arrive on the scene and gun down the shooter.
Okay. I guess I'm out of time, Joe, but I guess we can agree to disagree on that.